listening to the Sportz Hive podcast.
Oh, Wade, what a play! Wow.
Good afternoon, Sportz Hive Nation, and welcome back to the Sportz Hive podcast, where we provide you with all of the buzz in the sports world. I'm your host, Jacob Hyde, and alongside me is Keric Jackson. He is going to be subbing in for Luke Hoffman for the near future. Today is Wednesday, April 29th, 2020, and today is going to be all talk about the NFL draft, seeming that it was only really one of the only live sporting events that has happened with this whole coronavirus pandemic that has been going around the world the past couple of months. And we will also be sprinkling in a little bit of NBA news, not much, but just a little. So without any further interruptions, let's get right into it. So, Keric, obviously, you know, the Sportz Hive has been on a little hiatus, seeming that there hasn't really been any sports going on, and hence there's no sports, there's no sporting news. So we took a little break with the podcast. So I just want to ask you, how have you been doing this through this whole thing, this whole quarantine that we've been going through? How are you surviving?
I've been doing good personally. I've just been kind of chilling in my house, getting some work done every here and there. Still trying to get paid as best as I can. Um, but yeah, I've been handling it pretty well. How about yourself?
Yeah, it's been pretty rough actually. I mean, you really can't really do anything except really watch TV and play video games. So I've been playing a lot of Call of Duty and 2K. It's just been a lot of laziness going around. I've been doing a little yard work, but that's here and there. But usually during the day, I've just been sitting around working on my Twitter page and just watching TV and doing whatever. So now that we're finally back with the podcast, we can finally talk about a little bit of sports here, and that is going to be the NFL draft, which happened last Thursday through Saturday. And the first thing I want to touch on here, Keric, is just the virtual draft in general, because they had to switch. At first, they were going to do the NFL draft in Las Vegas, and they were going to do it with no fans. But then after a lot of the states started shutting down, they just canceled the whole thing in general, and they moved uh, it to online. And I didn't know how it was going to work out. And honestly, I think it worked out pretty good. And I just want to throw a little numbers here. For attendance wise, on average, on Thursday for the first round, 15.6 million people tuned in to watch the first round of the NFL draft on Thursday night. And that was up 37% from last year in 2019. On Friday, 8.2 million people tuned in, and that was up 40% from last year. And on Saturday, for rounds 4 through 7, 4.2 million people watched, and that was up 32% from 2019. And out of all these numbers, the number that really shocked me was the Saturday number, 4.2 million people. I honestly, personally, do not watch those later rounds because it doesn't really affect me. Like it doesn't take that, it takes forever. And I mean, it's not like the players we know, so it doesn't really intrigue me that much. But I did kind of watch a little bit on Saturday since there's no sports going on. And all of the statistics I got were from ESPN. So, Keric, the question I want to ask you is just, was the virtual draft a success or failure in your perspective?
No, I feel like it was definitely a success. I feel like it affected everybody that was involved. I feel like it affected a lot of fans, a lot of families, especially. I mean, a lot of those numbers came because a lot of the fans that typically go to the direct venue are now, sitting at home, watching it with their families. A lot of the players that would typically be at the venue are at home watching with their families. Um, a lot of the coaching staff and the front offices are at home, and they've got the TVs going up too. Um, and that's what's actually one of the points I wanted to touch on. The being able to see the coaches and GMs get to be at home with their families through this process, I feel like is one of the bigger success stories of this virtual draft because it gave them the opportunity to actually be home with their family and have them sort of involved in the process too. So I feel like overall it was definitely a success, and I think that the commissioner should definitely look into other ways that they can have this happen for a lot of the coaches.
Yeah, and it was actually touching on your point. It was actually really cool seeing all those cameras set up in the GMs and owners and coaches' houses because, and the people that were even running, like Reese Davis, they touched on how they were commenting on the different things that they saw in their houses, like all the things that they had mapped out with different players. Like Chicago, their GM or coach had their wall was like all made of something. I don't know what it was, but it looked pretty cool. And it's just like and like it was funny too because like Bill Belichick, they when they had their pick sitting in the chair instead of him, so that turned out to be like a whole meme. So it turned into some funny things as well. But I think overall it was a success, and it was pretty cool that they got to also bring in fans too in the commissioner's basement where he had different fans from different teams as they were making the pick. They were in the background via Skype or whatever they were on. But I think since that fans could not be in person with the NFL draft, and I know a lot of people that wanted to be there in Las Vegas, but they couldn't. And I think bringing that fan perspective as well was also a pretty cool thing to see.
For sure, yeah. It definitely was interesting to see how everybody kind of adapted to it and how they kind of got through without any issues as well. So I think they did a really good job with it.
Yeah, I think it was a complete success. So next, there was a lot of controversy on Twitter and all of social media about obviously everybody's going to ask who had the best draft, who had the worst draft, what were the draft grades for each team. So I just want to go through and ask you, Keric, uh, just name a couple teams and why you think this. Who had the best draft and who had
Right off
the
the
worst?
bat, I feel like one of the teams that definitely comes to mind is Detroit. Detroit selected really well in terms of getting Jeff Okuda in the first round and then being able to bolster a lot of that defense that's kind of been their downfall and replacing names like Darius Slay in terms of their defense. So I feel like they're definitely one of the teams that selected very well in this draft for them. In terms of who, in terms of who selected worst,
And oh yeah,
um, I kind of think that the Packers are down there in a way because I definitely like their first round pick. With Jordan Love, they're definitely selecting somebody from the future. They're definitely taking a pathway that they used for Aaron Rodgers before Brian Gutekunst got there with Brett Favre. So as much as it kind of puts Aaron Rodgers on the clock, you already know that he's just going to be the developmental guy for Jordan Love in that sense. Um, as much as I liked their second and third round picks because by getting AJ Dillon, they get a power running back, which they haven't had, and in getting their tight end, they have another person that can be a younger guy compared to the veterans that are on their team. I still think that they kind of reached on a lot of these picks. A lot of people were under the impression that they needed a receiver, and maybe they still have plans to get one this offseason, but I feel like they were definitely names on the table that they could have had and maybe just kind of passed up on.
yeah, and I definitely want to touch on the Packers draft after this because I know since Thursday, basically when they selected Jordan Love at 20, when they traded up for Jordan Love at 26, our group chat at the Sports Hive was debating this all through the weekend on why, and I kept defending their picks because I mean, as much as people see that they need a receiver, they kind of don't because we have plenty of receivers, and three of them, I even say this, three of them are coming out of their second year, so it doesn't take it's not 1 month and you're developed as a wide receiver. It takes time to develop, and like I said, Devontae Adams when he came out of the league, when he was drafted in the second round when he first started his career, he was dropping passes and he wasn't running the best routes. And now look at him; he's one of the top 10 receivers in the league. So it just takes time to develop, I think. And I do have the Packers on the worst uh, drafting wise because of where they picked each player. But I just want to touch on the Packers after I talk about my best and worst picks of the draft. So if you are all done with your explaining your
Sure.
best and worst, Keric, I will move on to mine. The best, my first best team that I think drafted throughout this whole draft was the Arizona Cardinals. They took Isaiah Simmons in the top 10, and then they took offensive lineman Josh Jones. Also, I think uh, they needed both of those players, not specifically those players, but I like the picks. They needed both of those positions. Their front seven on defense is pretty bad, so getting Isaiah Simmons is a really big pickup for them, I think. And then obviously the tackle protecting Kyler Murray coming into his second year, I think, is going to be a really big opportunity for Kyler to improve in at the quarterback position. The second team, I think, had the best draft were the Baltimore Ravens. They selected Patrick Queen, and then they in the second round they got J.K. Dobbins, and I think J.K. Dobbins was one of the best running backs besides like Jonathan Taylor and a couple others in college football last year. He could do it all. He could run over people. He has that versatility. It was a great pick for Baltimore, and I think they are going to be one of the top teams. Uh, I think they're one of the favorites to win the Super Bowl after the draft happened. And lastly, the third team, the new coach Mike McCarthy and obviously Jerry Jones on his $250 million yacht. They selected a very good draft. I would give them an A+ for their draft class. They obviously took CeeDee Lamb, debatably one of the best wide receivers in the whole draft class this year. And then they drafted Trevon Diggs, the cornerback, and that's Stephon Diggs' brother. So I think they got a weapon for Dak Prescott, and obviously they needed help on the corners, so they got a corner out of Trevon Diggs. So I think those are the three best teams that I think drafted very well this year, and the two worst teams I think were the Packers and the Raiders. And I know a lot of people thought that they reached on Jordan Love when they drafted up, but I did hear that a couple teams might have wanted to take him at that 26 spot, or even I think it was like I forgot the teams that they were exactly wanting to take him, but I heard that a couple of teams were eyeing him up, and I know Matt LaFleur really liked Jordan Love. They came out and said that, so that's why they decided to take him number 1 overall. And obviously AJ Dillon, he could be a really good short down back for the Packers, and even that's if they keep both Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams. But I mean, people are on the impression that why would they select a running back? It's just telling that showing Aaron Jones that he isn't good enough or he's getting his job taken away. And I don't think that at all. Aaron Jones is our running back. He's the top running back. And I think if anything, they would trade or cut Jamal Williams, if anything. And AJ Dillon would be the second string running back. But I think if they keep all three, AJ Dillon would be a good short down back, especially down in the red zone on like the 2-yard line. If it's like a 3rd and goal or something, I think he would be a really good back in that sense. And lastly, the Raiders. I like the Ruggs pick. It could have been. It might have been a little reach. I thought they could have picked Judy or CeeDee Lamb, but they got their wide receiver. But I do think they reached on Arnett at the corner position. I think that was at 19, I believe. They picked him. Keric, I actually wanted to ask you about that. Do you think? Obviously, I think that they reached on that position. If the Raiders did not pick Arnett at 19 or in that range, where do you think he would have fallen to?
I feel like he probably could have fallen into the mid-second round for sure. I know that The Raiders are typically known to reach on a lot of their picks, but I mean, who knows what's behind that great mind of John Gruden's? He maybe see something that we don't. But
Yeah.
yeah, he definitely probably reached a little bit on that one, and he probably could have gotten him still in the second round had he meddled around with some of the picks that he had. But like I said, it's all in the mind of great John Gruden.
Yeah, we honestly don't know what goes around with him. He's a sneaky guy, and he'll do whatever he wants to do. He
For
has
sure, yeah.
a mind of his own, that's for sure. So we are done with we have chosen our best and worst draft teams for the 2020 NFL draft. So, like I said before, Keric, I want to touch on the Packers draft. I know a lot of people have did not like the draft at all. A lot of experts have given the Packers an F grade. I mean, Jordan Love is he's the future basically, and I know Aaron Rodgers is 36, and he actually gets injured. He honestly gets injured a lot of the year. He's playing injured, and that's when he plays at his worst, I think. And so I would take Jordan Love over Boyle any day of the week. I know a lot of people would, but all I think all the fans say they reached on that pick, which I don't get. I mean, they traded up because I know Matt LaFleur liked him, and maybe a couple teams would have taken Love before the Packers at 30. But a lot of people thought even if they didn't have to trade up for a backup. I think that's what everybody's point was. But I do like the pick, and I like most of the picks, and it shows that we don't have to depend on Aaron Rodgers to pass the ball as much because we got the tight end in the third round, and he's a good run blocker, and obviously we have Aaron Jones, and so it seems like we're flipping to a run first team, and then we're trying to get the run down, and then we can get into play action, and Aaron Rodgers can find his open receivers. I think that's with those first three picks. Well, not the second round and third round picks. I think that's where they were kind of heading. I think they were heading down that kind of road as turning into a run first team and not depending on Aaron Rodgers as much. So, Keric,
Yeah, I feel
what is
like
your take on that?
the Packers. I feel like the Packers definitely know what they're doing in terms of this, and they're probably doing or know what they're doing more than a lot of the analysts out here think that they're doing. Um, but yeah, I could. They definitely. Yeah, they
Yeah,
definitely.
and fans.
I know it's clear that they have a different plan that everybody thinks. I think everybody's under the impression that we need to run the offense through Aaron Rodgers, but I feel like head coach Matt LaFleur and GM Brian Gutekunst are trying to take the ball out of his hands a little bit more because they kind of see that in a way he is declining because last season he threw a lot more passes away than he had in years past. Um, and so yeah, I feel like they definitely kind of see that running tag attack of offense, and I think that that's something that they want to build on.
Yeah, and obviously some of these, and like I know a lot of people are saying, like I can bring up the point that all the fans were pretty mad at the way the Packers were playing last year and how they were struggling at some point at a lot of points in some games of the like against the Chargers and the 49ers. They can and even the year before that, Aaron Rodgers was struggling a little bit with passing the ball. Um, and they can blame it on the wide receivers all they want, but if Aaron Rodgers is missing throws and throwing the ball away, I mean, it's not the wide receiver's fault. I mean, they do drop some passes, yes, but not all of it's just on we need a wide receiver because Aaron Rodgers isn't getting. Sometimes he's not even getting the ball to the receivers, and I know we got that later in the draft in a couple of consecutive 6 round picks. We got some offensive line help, but it's not just all on the wide receivers. It's not all their fault, and I think we have enough wide receivers, and they trust the development of like Lazard and Van Scantling and St. Brown. St. Brown is coming back from injury from last year, so Packer fans need to look at all of that, just the broad view of the whole team and see what we have and see that they're in the middle of developing their game and they need to trust the process. And like you said, the GM and the head coach, they know a lot more. That's why why they're hired as to an NFL team. They're a lot more knowledgeable than just us fans and what we see on TV and what we need, what the analysts think we need. And we see that on TV, and sometimes the analysts are wrong, and the GM and the coach know best. So I just think we need to trust the process as Packer fans.
Yeah, at the end of the day, what the
and,
analysts are doing
let
on
it ride
TV
out and
is
see what happens.
ultimately just a guess, you know. They look at the rosters and they see holes that they think that we need filled.
Yep.
They don't really take into account a lot of the potential of the younger players that they typically the head coaches and GMs do. So a lot of that just needs to be left to the coaching staff and GMs rather than
Front
the
office.
analysts and fans.
Yep. I totally agree. And I know if Luke was on here with us, I think we would be having a whole debate on this because he did not. He said he liked the picks,
Right.
but it's just the value of the picks and where we took them. It was questionable. But I know he didn't like the Jordan Love pick at 26. But I see it with the injuries that Aaron Rodgers has sustained throughout his career, and he's 36. He's not going to be Tom Brady. I don't think he's going to be Tom Brady and playing when he's past 40.
Maybe he does
So
play into his 40s.
I think it was a good pick.
Developing Jordan Love. I mean, Aaron Rodgers sat for a few years before he ended up becoming the starter in Green Bay, before Brett Favre decided to leave, and it can just be the same type of deal here.
Mm-hmm. And look how it turned out. He's probably one of the most athletic. Well, not athletic. He's I don't know how to word it. The way he throws and the way he can the talent. The best talent we've probably ever seen. The way he runs the quarterback position, how he can make those kind of throws. So if Keric has nothing else to add about the NFL draft, I want to touch on the NBA just a little bit. We heard this past week that Adam Silver is opening up and letting teams that have states that are easing their stay-at-home order, they are allowed to open practice facilities and start practicing. I kind of see that as a light at the end of the tunnel kind of thing, because it shows that we could be almost there, not almost there, but we could be looking at possibly the NBA finishing a couple regular season games and turning it over to the playoffs and hopefully finding a 2020 NBA champion. So Keric, when you heard that news, could you see the NBA finishing a couple regular season games and doing a playoff kind of series in maybe late July, August, or maybe even pushing it into September?
It's an interesting thing that he's doing. I mean, I respect the fact that he is trying to pull the NBA, back into where it needs to be this season. Obviously, there's been a lot of talk on whether or not the NBA should be continuing this season, given that the timetables would just be ever so shifted backwards in terms of next season, if there would be a next season, which I assume there would be at this point. But yeah, I mean, I definitely respect his persistence in this matter in terms of getting things back to where they need to be. I respect the fact that he's taken the time to really let this thing pan out. I respect the fact that he's talking to the right people in terms of how he can do this in the safest way possible without putting more players at risk.
Yeah, like you brought up, I honestly like what he's doing. He's the way he's handling the situation. Obviously, when he heard about this whole outbreak and that Rudy Gobert got tested for COVID-19, he shut down the NBA basically right away. And I think it was a good thing because later we found out Donovan Mitchell was the next player to get tested. And obviously, he, well, the whole Jazz team was tested, and Donovan Mitchell tested positive. And that night when the NBA was canceled, Donovan Mitchell was going to play. So it was a good idea for Adam Silver to shut down the league. And obviously, all the other leagues followed suit once the NBA did it. And obviously, people were mad about it. And now a lot of people are going crazy about there not being any sports. But I think it's for the best, and we just got to wait it out. And now that states are kind of easing their stay-at-home order, we'll just have to see if I'm assuming all the like a bunch of cases are going to rise, and they might have to shut it down again. But I honestly don't know. I'm not an expert, so I'm not going to really comment on when we should open up. But it's just basically personal. You should, if you feel safe enough that you can go out and do something. Like I know golf courses are open. If you feel safe enough to go do stuff, it's your choice. Either that or you can stay home. It's just a personal choice at this point, with states starting to ease the stay-at-home order. So I just wanted to touch on that part of the NBA quick. And lastly, Keric, I know I told you about this earlier. Um, I personally have not started the Michael Jordan documentary. I haven't watched it yet. I know Keric has, so I'm gonna just ask him, with no sports being on, uh, and just overall, how do you like the documentary, and how do you portray Michael Jordan after watching the first four
It's
episodes
definitely
of
something
The Last
that
Dance?
is able to, I guess, fill that void, with it being every Sunday, and that typically, being where like football would be, but obviously it's with basketball in this case. Um, but yeah, I definitely feel like it's attracting a lot of attention from sports fans of all types in this sense. Um, and the way it doesn't really portray Michael Jordan as like a bad person, I would say. It's just showing, I feel like it's more describing the commitment to the team that he had back then, and how I feel like it's shown more of how good of a person he is, especially these last couple episodes when when the main focal point was Dennis Rodman. They talked about how he needed to go on a vacation, and Dennis was just talking all up and down about how Michael and Scotty had just this different relationship with him than a lot of other people did, and they kind of like understood, what he was about. So I feel like it's definitely giving off a better portrayal of MJ than I think people kind of expected heading in.
Yeah, I know, because before this whole documentary even dropped, I know he came out and said that this documentary might be seen as making him a bad person, uh, just the way maybe the documentary was made. And he said that many people could probably see him as more of a bad person. But looking over Twitter after all these episodes and stuff, people have said that it makes him look more of the GOAT, the greatest of all time, and that there shouldn't really even be a debate of him over LeBron because of what the documentary has showed. Like people are just saying there's basically no debate anymore. Michael Jordan is the greatest of all time. And personally, I have no comment on that because one, I haven't seen the documentary, and two, I really haven't. I didn't grow up watching Michael Jordan. Obviously, I was born in 2000, so I mean, I wasn't able to watch Jordan with the Bulls, or and I probably even if I was, I wouldn't be old enough to comprehend like how good he was. I just was grown up to watch Kobe and LeBron basically. So I do have a bias with like how good LeBron is and how good Kobe was, but I've only seen highlights on like YouTube of Michael Jordan. So I think the people that debate these and that are younger, I think that they're more biased than the people that are older and have seen both Michael Jordan and LeBron James play both in their primes at a reasonable age to understand how great they both were. I think those people should be the ones to really debate who was the GOAT, and that's the opinions you should basically pay attention to. So that for us, that basically wraps up today's show. I hope you all enjoyed tuning in to the Sportz Hive podcast, seeming that we are back in action. I hope you guys have a great rest of your Wednesday, and I hope you guys tune in next time, the Sportz Hive podcast.